Hello, my name is Claudia Salvador, and I'm a volunteer for Paso. I want to thank our guest today, Chris Hemingway, for joining me. Chris, thanks for taking the time.
Of course.
First question that I have for you is, so you last performed with Paso on February 29th at the Kennedy Center in the Bossa Nova and Beyond concert, right? So a lot has happened since then, coronavirus. I'm sure there have been some projects in between. And so Paso is very happy that you are participating in the special live streaming concert on July 3rd, during which you are the featured soloist. Besides having some live music for our patrons this summer, Paso wants its audience to know a little more about them, about its history and its musicians. So for the first, that's just to set things up. The first question I actually have for you is, for those who may not know much about you, can you tell us your story?
Sure. I grew up in Florence, South Carolina, and my parents were very heavy churchgoers, and so most of the music that was played in my house was either gospel or R&B funk. And so my father played a little guitar. My mom sort of sang a little bit, but never in public. So I had music floating around in my house for a good bit, and I think that was my early inspirations. And then one day they offered instruments in 6th grade, and that was a way for me to get out of class for 45 minutes, and I figured, well, okay, I'll do that. But I didn't think it all the way through, because it turns out that that was just more homework on top of all the homework I already had. However, I ended up trying to play the instrument and got better at it and realized it might be something that I could do, and each year I got better and better at it, and it became my passion. So, and over the years I just practiced and practiced, went to college, and became a professional musician in Pittsburgh, and then I finally moved to New York City and been still living the dream.
Who has been your biggest influence in music?
Wow, that's a hard one. I guess if I had to name one, it would have to be Charlie Parker.
In light of the various groups that you have performed with over the years, what has been unique about your experience in Paso?
Playing the music, playing music that I would generally not be able to play, which is tango, or at least tango style. And there's always a situation where I'll be in a concert with some classical ensembles, and we'll play like one tango piece, and while that's nice, we're not necessarily trained to play that music. But in this situation, we have the maestro here, Sergio, who is a direct, descendant of that music. And so it's been really good for me to experience that firsthand. I can't get that anywhere else, really. So that, for me, having Sergio be there, it's been great.
Given your ease with playing music in both the classical genre and the jazz genre, and with your experience playing with Paso, what have been some of the challenges that you've overcome incorporating all these genres, and what do you think people should pay more attention to?
Let's see, mastering. I guess beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I never really thought of myself as a master, but I can just tell you the experiences I've had with. It's funny because they kind of do overlap. When I'm playing classical music, as I've gotten older, I've been thinking about it more in terms of performing it as if it sounds or has the sense that it's being improvised. Now, that doesn't mean I'm making up notes and changing notes and doing things of that nature. It's just that when you hear a really good improviser, it comes out very naturally. And I think sometimes, because of the relentless pursuit of perfection in classical music, you can tend to lose that a little bit. It sounds a little robotic. And I don't think any composer's goal for the performer is to perform it that way. They want their music to have a life. But if you come at it, like I said, we get so caught up in trying to learn all the notes and making sure everything is correct that we kind of lose that sense of humanity in the music. But then the opposite can be true with jazz, because the music is very organic and it definitely comes from a very deep place, directly from your soul, because you're improvising it. But then what we're trying to do with that is make it sound as organized to some extent. That's a very dangerous word to say in jazz, but we're trying to make it a little bit more organized so that the listener can actually have something to hold on to. Because, you know, my experience in the past is when you get really, really far out there in terms of improvisation, it's very hard for the listener to come on board with it because they have no idea what's going on, and sometimes we don't have an idea what's going on, but sometimes that's the point, you know. But like I said, there seems to be a little bit of a crossfade between the two. I try to bring the things that I do in classical music in terms of perfection of execution into jazz, and then I try to do a little bit of the opposite, bring the organic folk-like quality to what I'm doing when I'm playing classical music.
What is your process when it comes to practicing?
Well, I mean, you know, obviously, to learn the pieces, I have to take my time in the beginning. But I think the most important part of learning a piece of music for me is understanding its origins, and so that I can then do the research and find out how the music should be played. And again, to kind of piggyback on what I said earlier, in this case, I've got Sergio here, who is he's very knowledgeable about this music because it is his music. So I have him as a resource, so I can listen to the music and also talk to him. Now, I don't always have that luxury. So when I don't have a Sergio to talk to, then I YouTube, many thousands of records. There's almost always an example that I can refer to get the origins correct. And I think if I start there, then I can, it'll help me, it'll lead me in the right direction as to how do I want to approach learning a piece of music. And then after that, there's all the technical stuff of taking it slow and speeding it up and learn how to play all the fast notes and all of that. But to get the music to sound the way it's quote unquote supposed to sound, I think the most important part for me is the listening and learning the style.
What do you find is most challenging about being a musician today, and how have you been handling the current changes due to COVID-19?
Yeah, that's a really good question because we're all still trying to figure this one out. We hope it's temporary, and if that's the case, we're just kind of passing time. So I know for me, I'm practicing a lot, but I'm also getting more involved with the recording part of music. So I've had to do a few videos, but I was put in charge of taking care of the audio per se. So I had to learn how to handle the software, how to put the instruments together and make them sound like they're all coming from the same room when clearly we're not. And that, you know, it's been a learning process, but it was fun. I appreciated that. And this is a tool that I'll probably be able to use in the future for editing music, even when COVID is past, hopefully. Other than that, I don't really know because the future is so unclear at this moment. So I guess I'll just have to get back to you on that one because we'll see what I come up with.
What are your current projects?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. So the saxophone quartet, not the saxophone quartet, the saxophone quartet that I work with, we're right now going to do a series of not live performances, but recorded performances of our repertoire and some new stuff that we've got going on. And I will be in charge of editing the music. So this goes back to what I was saying earlier. And we will hopefully produce a record or a CD, if you will, during the COVID era. And so that's the latest project.
If someone is interested in immersing themselves in jazz music but doesn't know where to start, is there a composer or song that you would recommend that they listen to?
Well, if they're interested in jazz, or if they want to be interested in jazz, generally I lead people to Miles Davis. Miles has the biggest selling record of all time, Kind of Blue, and it's also got some of the most legendary musicians, John Coltrane, Cannonball Adderley, Wynton Kelly, Paul Chambers. I'm sorry, Paul Chambers is not on. Yes, Paul Chambers, and forgot who else is on that record. But it's like the greatest record for jazz to get you started, and so you can have from that avenue. You can follow Miles's band, and it'll take you a whole bunch of places, or just follow the individual musicians. So that's a great record for jazz. Getting into classical music. How I got introduced into classical music was it was a greatest hits classical. It was a classical greatest hits medley. So it was all the very popular stuff like Mozart, Beethoven's Fifth Sonata, a lot of things that everyone's kind of heard before, but just didn't exactly know what the name of it was. And so for classical music, if you can find one of those things, greatest hits, I think that'll be a great start because it'll probably be listener friendly. And as it relates to tango, I'm a fan of Astor Piazzolla. And he's probably the biggest name, maybe not, but I think his music is very easy to get behind and listen to. It's really accessible.
Is there any living composer that you'd like to recommend the audience to check out?
Things that I would probably recommend. There's some new guys or new-ish guys that I think may have not gotten enough attention. One of which is Chris Potter. Now he's not that new; he's been around for quite some time, but he is still not a household name per se. But a fantastic saxophonist, jazz saxophonist, and I think if you were able to catch him live when COVID's over, you'd be doing yourself a favor. But of the young guys, there's a young guy in New York. His name is Tavon Pennicott. I think he's a fantastic saxophonist. There's a number of young guys that I would recommend that are playing great music that you should check their music out. They write well, and you'd hear a lot of new, interesting stuff that you haven't heard before, and maybe a new favorite song for you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.